The former President Bill Clinton is certainly never afraid to say what's on his mind, even if it might make fellow Democrats occasionally uncomfortable. We spoke about that a little bit more. Here's part 2 of my interview. What do you think about Mitt Romney?
I told you what I thought. I've said many times I had a good encounter with him when he tried to save the AmeriCorps program. I don't feel that I have to have personal hostility with him to disagree with his ideas, but I listened very carefully to what these Republicans said in the primary and to the Mr. Norquist, the anti-tax activist, when he said it'd be fine with him if Governor Romney got elected because all he needed to do was sign his name. They were going to run things out of the Tea Party house. It's troubling to me because I think that if you look at Greece, if you look at the United Kingdom, if you look at where the world is today, the people who say austerity and unemployment now, and then we'll balloon the debt later and have higher interest rates and we'll never recover, that's basically the Republican platform. It's the same platform of the Eurozone, which the Europeans are now trying to get out of.
You know, you were very critical. You didn't mention him by name, Mitt Romney, but you suggested the other night in that speech you gave, that fundraising event with the president, that no serious Republican, including the Republican presidential nominee, stood up and complained when Congressman Allen West, Republican of Florida, Tea Party favorite, said flatly that between 78 and 81 members, Democrats in the House of Representatives, were communists. And you raised the specter.
You know, outside of China, Vietnam, North Korea, and a few minor parties in the former Soviet Union, I don't know if there's 78 or 81 communists left in the world.
So what was your point, though, about that we're serious Republicans weren't disagreeing with him?
My point was that if the president says anything in an ad or a speech that anybody disagrees with, that they parse it endlessly and subject to them this withering criticism. And then a guy stands up and says that 78 to 81 of his colleagues are literally communists, members of the Communist Party is what he said. The leadership says nothing about it. The nominee for president says nothing about it. Near as I could tell, the press wasn't very concerned about it. And I just don't think there should be a double standard here. This is not a level playing field here. There are serious ideas at stake. And if you look at what we do here at the Global Initiative, what works is what we're trying to do here. We may not work miracles, but we'll get something done. Networks of cooperation get things done in the real world. What works in politics too often is constant conflict. I'm trying to get us to the point where we'll calm down, listen to each other, treat each other with respect, and figure out something we can do together. In the meanwhile, I think it's important not to get off on an ideologically driven rather than economically driven policy, which will cause us more trouble.
Quick question on Syria. I remember going with you to Rwanda in 1998, and you acknowledged then that it was a horrible mistake. You heard reports about what was going on, the slaughter, the genocide in Rwanda and Burundi, but you really didn't do anything. You regretted that deeply. What about now? What should the president, what should the United States be doing about the slaughter that's going on in Syria?
Well, first of all, I don't think we could have saved everybody in Rwanda, but 800,000 people were killed in about 90 days.
Mostly with machetes.
Yes, mostly with machetes. And it takes, we weren't as fast as we are now. It would have taken a while to mobilize and get here. But I wish I had sent some troops there earlier. And I think that if the world had acted more quickly, we could have saved at least a third of those who were lost. So I regret it. On Bosnia, I was ready to go in 93, but as you remember, I tried very hard and sent my Secretary of State to Europe and tried to get the French and the British, the Germans to support our position. I was not successful. It took 2 years in Srebrenica to do that. This is different. I think.
Why is Syria different?
Well, they're all different. The facts on the ground are different. I feel it's pretty clear to me that the people who were involved in this last slaughter were killed, if not by government forces, with people who were allied with them and with their knowledge. And we might be able to do something to help the opposition forces get some more arms, for example. But this is not like Libya, where there's vast stretches of land. You could bomb the opposition forces without hurting a lot of civilians. You had a really well-organized fighting force trying to topple the Syrian government. Fareed Zakaria wrote a very interesting article on this, talking about how much more complicated it was. And it's hard to get effective policy because the Russians are still defending the Syrian government. So it's a very frustrating thing, but I believe that what the United States and its allies are trying to do now by, tightening the embargo, the sanctions, and trying to persuade the Russians to come over to their side and to stop selling them arms and to cut them off from arms, that may be about all we can do right now with a reasonable chance of affecting the outcome. It is not morally satisfying when you find out another 100 people have been slaughtered. But I think that the President and the Secretary of State are dealing with, an extremely difficult situation that is, in its way, that the case for military action now is harder to make than it was in Rwanda or in Libya or in Bosnia, for that matter. It's a very difficult thing. It may come to that, and we may have a coalescing of the opposition forces, which will make it look like there's an achievable force option, but I don't think we're there yet. I'm sure they're looking at all the things, contingency plans, looking at it. But Assad ought to go, but it's hard when the Russians block UN actions and continue to supply arms. That's why Hillary's been working on that on this trip.
More of the interview coming up. The former president also speaks about his own health. New information he shares with us on what he's eating, also what characteristics he thinks he's passed on to his daughter, Chelsea, who is also here at the Clinton Global Initiative. The rest of the interview, part 3 of the interview, will air later this hour. What about Mitt Romney's platform? What does the president have to say about that? We're going to get some reaction to what we just heard from the former president, from a senior advisor to the Romney campaign, Eric Fernstrom. He's standing by live. We'll get his reaction from Boston and a lot more. That's all coming up. My one-on-one interview here in Chicago with the former President Bill Clinton wasn't just all about politics and policy. It was also a little bit about family. And when we spoke about the president's daughter, Chelsea, his face lit up with pride. Let's talk about the Clinton Global Initiative. This is an important meeting that you're having. You do a lot of work around the world. Now you're doing work here in the United States. And I was intrigued that Chelsea, your daughter, she's here now too. What do you want her to do here? What is her role?
Well, first, she is an active participant in our foundation activities. She's on a number of the foundation boards overseeing, healthcare. She's very interested in CGI. She knows a lot about the economy. She's done a lot of work in it. And so we try to get her involved in all of our things, and her role is always something that's to discuss between her and our CGI staff. But she knows a lot about workforce preparedness. She knows a lot about saving companies in trouble and reopening them. And,
I raised the question because I've known her since she was 13 years old when you guys came to Washington. And last night I was at the Kennedy Center at the Vital Voices event, which helps women around the world. And she made a presentation there. And I looked at her and I saw in her eyes, as I was watching her, and she was very impressive, I saw the best of Bill Clinton and the best of Hillary Clinton in Chelsea Clinton. And you've probably seen that as well. And I wonder if you want to talk a little bit about that.
No, I'm really proud of her. I think she's a fine person. The most important thing to me. And she's smart, caring, able, and determined. I think she's, terrific. And I got a great son-in-law, which is always a good thing to like your in-laws, So I want her to do whatever she wants to do, but I'm really grateful now that with this work she's doing, on television, and the work she does at NYU and the college, the course she's teaching at Columbia, that she's still willing to be so active in our foundation activities. She really cares about this stuff. And she's helped me do a lot of work at the foundation, try to improve the management, and just manage our massive growth. It's fun. I'm grateful to her.
She got the best of her mom, the best of her dad.
Yeah, she got her father's energy and her mother's brains and character. She's something.
We're out of time. How do you feel?
Great. As far as I know, I'm doing fine. I really feel good.
Still on that diet?
Still on the diet. Yeah, I'm trying to make it, as long as I can here.
No meat, no chicken.
No dairy.
No dairy?
Mm.
No.
And I'm trying none. And I'm trying to eat less white.
What does that mean?
Plant. That is, no processed bread, fewer potatoes, less rice, fewer carbs that turn into sugar in your body. When you get older, and particularly if you've had heart problems, you got to be really sensitive to things you eat that not just sugar, but that turn into sugar in your body. Because this diabetes problem, people become more vulnerable to pre-diabetic conditions when they get older. And of course now, because of childhood obesity, we have a lot of kids who are developing type 2 diabetes. So I watch that all pretty carefully. I try to, exercise as much as I can with this crazy life I've got. But I really try to watch the diet. It makes a difference. And, I'm having a good time in life. I'd like to stay around a little longer.
Yeah, we'd like to have you around for a little longer. A lot
Thank
longer,
you.
I should say.
Thank you.
You look great. You're thinner than I've seen you in a long time, but you feel healthy. And
I feel great, yeah.
I'm glad you're doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
Mr. President, thanks very much.
Thank you, Wolf.
That's it for me. Thanks very much for joining us. I'm Wolf Blitzer in the Situation Room. The news continues next on CNN.